At MWave 2024, we had 7 of the best 65-inch TVs you could buy all lined up in a row, and which one do you think was our favorite? Stop the FOMO, we are done with MWave. Do you have a winner of MWave?
So my favorite TV of M-Wave.
All right, ready, Brian? Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hey, welcome to our session. Today, you're gonna find out about these TVs. These are the best TVs out there, blah, blah, blah. So we have all these different brands, and these TVs, you have the best. And then you have the budget. And the question is, can you distinguish between the best and the budget? And if you can't, obviously get the budget as large as you can. And if you can, convince your wife to save up. So we're gonna start introducing the TVs today.
So quickly, who are you? Where are we? I'm Brian from Brian's Tech Therapy. From YouTube, we have Stop the FOMO from YouTube, my partner in crime. We have some of the best TVs in the world here today from TCL, Sony, Samsung, and LG.
Today's video is brought to you by WhoKeys. Trying to build a PC on a budget, but don't know where to buy your Windows software cheaply? WhoKeys to the rescue. Use my coupon code SF20 and immediate discount with a free upgrade to Windows 11.
At the bottom of this order where it says code CARD, to the right is the product key you need to activate Windows. So copy this long number, then go to the Windows menu and click on Settings. In the Settings menu, at the bottom, select Update and Security. Select Activation, then select Change Product Key, paste what you copied from WhoKeys, click Next, click Activate, and you're done.
You can buy Windows 11 Pro or Office 2019 Pro with my discount code SF20. Yes, I've been using WhoKeys for the last several years on my own PC builds, and it just works.
We're going from also value-based on the corners to the TCL QM8, all the way to the other side to the LG B3. Several different technologies. Before we move on, let's really introduce each model. LG B3 is on the end. That is their entry level from last year. LG C4 is next to it, WOLED. We have the LG G4 with MLA technology. We also have the Samsung S95D 3rd Gen Quantum Dot OLED. We then have the Sony Bravia 9 state-of-the-art mini LED. We also then have the Sony A95L QD OLED. Lastly, the TCL QM8.
Standard mode on all these TVs is the most popular mode, with the exception of Samsung. Dynamic mode is the most popular. Most people watch sports in dynamic mode, so the Samsung is in dynamic mode. The TCL is in vivid mode. Same reason, right? I felt vivid mode is better for sports than sports mode. It feels washed out.
Now, we don't recommend these modes per se. Standard is what they mostly ship in. So we're really kind of indicating what is out of the box.
Let's start with the different technologies, right? You all know LCD technology. That's what put plasma out of business. So the LCD is the oldest technology out there, but it's staying relevant thanks to what TCL and Sony are doing. They continue to elevate the technology, taking the oldest technology we have here today and making it as good as possible at an affordable price. So TCL represents what I call the brute force approach. They are putting more dimming zones than any other TV out there, like almost 2,000, if not 2,000 or more, and very bright, and that's what's keeping it relevant and at a budget. Then we have the best from Sony. This was the king of TVs last year. So you have these two extremes next to each other. QD OLED, Sony A95L. If you were to ask, hey, if I had money was no object, what should I get? Often, it's this model. So they're next to each other for a reason. If you can't tell the difference, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, I'll just get this one, right? But then as we go across, this is not the only flagship model. Then Sony says, wait, TCL is just brute forcing it, throwing all the kitchen sink hardware. What if we gave that processing magic, what we're known for, image processing, color, cinema, onto an LCD with 3 times the number of dimming zones than last year's flagship, made it a little bit brighter, and then matched it to the brightest content available. 4,000 nits is the goal. They think they could tone map better than anyone else out there, even better than OLED TVs. When it gets that bright, it's this TV. And then we have the Samsung S95D using the latest QD OLED technology, 3rd gen. It's all about pushing the OLED technology with quantum dots. And you're thinking, okay, then I'll get the latest and greatest. But LG is staying relevant with its WOLED, white OLED technology. They were the first to establish, hey, you know what? No more burn-in. because they found a way to avoid burn-in using WOLED, white subpixel, and so their special power is this, white ice. Using MLA, they can make white content brighter than ever, brighter than even QD-OLED. So it depends on your use now. You're like, wait, really? Hockey looks so great on the LG G4.
Well, keep in mind that LG OLEDs, that was a weakness for them, or OLEDs in general. They would dim with white screen. Now it is a strength. They become one of the highest recommended brands for sports and hockey. So changing with each year, having improvements in terms of processing and panel technology, very important for TVs that release year after year.
And it goes to use case. If all you watch is sports, and that's why we wanted to start with sports, you see they all look slightly different. Some are brighter, some aren't. It's because some are not designed to make a white so bright. And MLA and G4 is specifically doing that. These two are WOLED like the G4, but they don't have MLA, right? Micro lens array technology, which is, it makes everything a little bit brighter. So you're paying a premium for that. If you can't tell the difference, then you might want to get the least expensive, which is the B3. So B3 was last year's entry level 120 hertz panel from LG. We're putting it here to see, is it staying relevant with this year's C4?
Now, when you're looking at these two values on the end, what you want to say to yourself is for the same money, you could maybe choose a larger model QM8 versus the other brands, or a larger B3 versus a G4. So for you to say, discern what you feel is important, you might want to go with something larger, and we'll also be showing you the 98-inch X90L. And as you walk out, LG also has the 97-inch G2.
Now, keep in mind, you guys are quite far from the TVs, mostly so you can see all of them at the same time. As we go through this presentation, as we near the end, feel free to stand up and get close to them, because oftentimes you should be sitting closer. So my suggested sitting distance is 50-degree viewing angle. So from a 65-inch, that's more like 5 feet, right? So wait, 5 feet only? So the 98-inch is a better example. From a 98-inch TV, a 50-degree viewing angle is around 7.5 to 8 feet. So that blue tape in that chair represents kind of like that 8 feet distance from the screen. So you can stand there. And what I suggest is when you go there and do that and watch that display, close your eyes, then open, and you'll be like, oh, that makes sense. And so it's something to think about when you wonder, am I sitting too close or too far? The one mode we will not do today is filmmaker mode in its raw form. Like you turn on the TV, oh, filmmaker mode. I've told that's great. Look at these lights.
We bring up filmmaker mode simply because it's accurate, but the lights need to be off. TV's greatest strength is its versatility. Also, you'll see different screen finishes on each manufacturer. They are not all the same. These are reasons why you'll buy one over the other. Something like the S95D we have here has an anti-reflective screen. It's more matte. That might be great for your environment. When you get into a home theater, less important, you're in a light-controlled room.
This is a good scene for reflections.
It's okay.
So in these darker scenes, is reflection an issue for you? So you'll notice there is the least reflection on the S95D.
How are you?
Do you see yourself in the reflection? Does it bother you? Some people don't even notice the reflection, like Brian. He never. Brian, what do you think of this anti-glare? I don't care. I don't see the reflections at all.
As good as possible.
So for some people, it's an annoyance. For others, I don't see it. Not a big deal. But at least Samsung's trying to show off. Hey, if you watch these dark scenes, look at me. I got no reflections. But then it feels like the grays are a little bit lifted, right? There is a trade-off to aggressively fighting the reflection.
And picture these TVs in your home. Reflection handling on the G4 is better than its counterparts C4 and B3. Keep in mind, that's when you're choosing is where's this TV going to live? What am I going to watch on it?
On this next content, it will be lower resolution, just 1080p, Minority Report, SDR, not HDR. And then you can see, oh, okay, well, how do the TVs upscale, the bit rates and so forth? Ultimately, does it look better? And as a reminder, so this is something that you guys may want or not want to do. When you go from sports to just basic movie watching, you might want to change the mode. So this was in dynamic mode for sports. Look at the color compared to the Sony, and we'll talk about why Sony has such natural skin color in standard mode in a second. But I'm dynamic mode, it feels a little over contrasty, right? So I would rather watch this in just regular standard. There's a bit more skin tone, or maybe take it to movie. Oh, okay, that looks natural, but then the Sony in standard had that color tone to begin with, and this is why you separate different brands. They all have their theme. For the Samsung to have that much or a little bit more color, it has to go down to movie, but then it's less bright. So Sony wants to bridge the gap between brightness but preserving some of that skin tone. So a lot of people get the Sony, I don't want to touch anything. I'm going to leave it in standard and forget about it, right? So if I put the Samsung back in standard,
Getting to know what each manufacturer's signature is so important. That will let you, or make you, or let you choose which one signature you prefer. If it's Samsung, it's bright, vibrant. If it's Sony, more accurate, bringing cinema home. If it's LG, perhaps a mixture of the two. Getting to know each manufacturer helps you make a choice.
and I want to mention, of all the TVs here, the Sony and the LG brought their most advanced processor to the models they have on display. So the G4 processor, in my opinion, is probably one of the best in 2024 because of what it does with upscaling lower bitrate content. It creates a little extra sharpness. It adds a little extra pop. You might notice it in some content. The Samsung reserved its best processor for the 8K TV. Instead, it's using its best panel and anti-glare to make up that difference. The Sony, both of these, the A95 and the Bravia 9 and the X90L, have the XR Clear that we always talk about. So Sony's XR Clear is why people buy it. It kind of preserves the cinematic feel no matter what TV you have. So from their entry level up to their flagship, you'll get the XR Clear on the Sony. And the TCL, they're saying, look, again, we're just going to brute force it. We'll do what we can. Their image processing, they think, is just good enough and close enough. And so we'll let you decide. Is it something that is close enough to the rest? Because there is no perfect TV. The reason why they're the perfect TV, they say, is because you can afford us, right? So as we go through non-cinema content, nature scenes and so forth, with fine hair and fine detail, then sometimes the OLED TVs separate themselves because that extra contrast. But then the Bravia 9 says, wait, I'm not OLED, look what I can do. Or the TCL says, I got extra dimming zones to do what OLED can do. So we're gonna switch on to film, Kaleidoscape, the stuff that you've been seeing in all the rooms. How do these TVs do high bit rate, 4K, HDR, which is why you're here. So I'm an HDR guy. I love HDR content. So Alpha was the first movie graded up to 4,000 nits. And so the Bravia 9 was actually designed to show movies like Alpha. This was the movie that caused 2 circuit breakers to blow yesterday. So we're going to go through these real fast. I'm not going to pause this time. But every time you see the sun, that's the brightest part of the scene. That's almost 4,000 nits. And that's the strength of the Bravia 9. Every TV has their weaknesses, but they all have their strengths. The Bravia 9, the G4, and the S95D, they're going to say, we're the brightest. We can do this the best. But the Bravia 9 is going to say, but we get closest to that brightness with the least tone mapping. We don't have to compress that brightness down. And the TCL will say, we're close enough to all of them, so let's save some money, right? Even though the B3 is the least expensive and supposedly the dimmest, is it too dim for you? And that's why we're encouraging you guys, take a look at these scenes from Alpha. These are very bright scenes, and you'll see brightness differences between all the TVs. Normally, the mini LEDs will be brightest in these high APL scenes where it's full screen, snow, but it looks like they're kind of keeping up, so it tells me, wow, OLED has really caught up. Even the B3 without the MLA, last year's TV.
And even the B3 off angle is a big difference.
Well, that's a good point about off angle. So you notice the TCL, those who are on angle, it looks great, but as you're taking your way down there to maybe less or more than 45 degrees, 60 degrees, the TCL loses some color, some contrast. So those of you curious how it should look, I suggest you move over here and see it on angle so you can see, oh wow, on angle, it's phenomenal. Whereas the Bravia 9, it has a wider angle because they're investing more in their wide angle technology to preserve the contrast and the color saturation.
The Bravia 9 was definitely the favorite, I think, of the people coming in. But what's interesting is, like last year with the QM8 FOMO, people came in looking for that TV. They heard about it. They wanted to see it. We had our own people in there. So that kind of made me think that people were a little bit favoring it because that was the hot new thing. The G4 was way on the other side. The S95D, people liked it and then immediately said, I don't know, that matte screen. It's like they almost had a lot of preconceived thoughts before they came in. And for me, the G4 constantly showed itself, over and over. And next to a very bright S95D, To me, the G4 was the winner by a smidge.
And that smidge was what? Because like you said, the S95D was equal brightness. What was the smidge? And the audio was off, so there was no
Yeah,
audio
the
comparison.
audio and the S95D, I think ours was brand new. It felt like it was brighter than S95Ds that you and I have both seen in the past. Actually, its standard mode was brighter than its dynamic mode. So, again, we couldn't, it's panel by panel, everything was reset. The S95D definitely fell behind in terms of processing. And in certain films, FOMO, that brightness completely escaped it. It just
Yeah.
disappeared. So it was there in a lot of the demo, not demo, but a lot of the movies. And then in certain filmic stuff, it just completely evaporated. But it's really the processing that made a difference. And also, FOMO, the reflection handling, as you mentioned before, the G4 has clearly better reflection handling than the C4, the B3. And it doesn't have so it's kind of, it's glossy, but it has great reflection handling. And no gaming was part of this, by the way.
No, no gaming. It was bright sports, bright SDR content, Minority Report. We saw it in standard mode, played it a little bit with the Vivid, but we thought standard was the best looking and bright. And of course, movies. Wonder Woman and Amsterdam and with Suicide Squad, Alpha. So my choice, hockey, a lot of hockey, maybe too much hockey. Hopefully the NHL doesn't call me.
NHL, little whistle.
My favorite TV of M-Wave, given its viewing. And I recognize that the tone mapping on the S95D did not match up to the Bravia 9 or the G4. That's right. It was bookended by those two in the movie Pan, that ship sailing into the sun. In order to correct that, you would have to bring contrast down by 10, 20%, but then your brightness drops a little. So you lose that impact. So a lot of people won't do that. I would choose not the G4 though. I would still choose the S95D because in the context of M-Wave, consistently, as we went into the darker scenes, I was really impressed by the anti-glare handling. The room was not too bright. And that anti-glare came...
Let me stop you. This is the guy that liked the matte finish at CES. I hated it. Then I defended it, and then you're on your video with the helicopter light, like, look at this thing.
What did we say? They designed this for specific lighting.
And
it was for M-Wave. They literally designed it for
couldn't see
light that was okay. This was like 20 feet ceilings. This was not 8 foot,
higher than that.
9 foot. Yeah, massive. 20 feet, 30 feet ceilings. So it was bright ambient light, but no direct light on the TV, and it wasn't super bright. It was just bright enough. And I thought that S95D was just magical. Tone mapping. I saw that it was a little rough, but it was okay. We didn't touch tone mapping. But that impact, scene after scene, I kept on looking over. I go, is that the S95D or the G4? Like you said,
you're
those
right.
two TVs kept on. And if you were on angle on the Bravia 9, then it was those three TVs. And so, but the S95D, I noticed the color. I had it on alpha. I had it on certain scenes where there was a bit more blue and orange in those scenes for whatever reason. I guess the luminance was higher.
The MLA hurt the G4 in terms of
it did.
The color. It got lost that saturation, especially off angle a little.
It did. The G4 is my favorite TV of the year. So I'm not saying the G4 is worse. The G4 is my TV I would bring home. But at M-Wave, I felt the S95D looked best because in that viewing condition, people asked me,
it's true.
What TV is that? And they're like, so how's the reflection handling? I put it on Dune, where you had that dark scene with a shadowed face. Like, oh, wow. You could see reflections on all the TVs. On the G4 and the A95L, it was muted. But on the S95D, none. It was just dead black in that room. And I was like,
you know what's funny, FOMO, is I heard people ask you about that, right? They're like, which one is that? And you go, oh, that's the S95D. Is that the matte finish? And they're looking at it, by the way. And you're like, yeah, they're like, nah, I'm good. I'm like, wait a minute, you just told me you liked
you know what? Before we leave, next year's M-Wave, I don't want anything smaller than 85-inch next year, with the exception of an 83, because I think the future is large, not because of anything. It's not just size. TCL, Hisense, now Sony, and Samsung, their best specs are 85 inches and above. Not even the 77 has the best specs, right?
Yeah.
The best specs are the larger sizes. I mean, TCL 110-inch, 98-inch, Hisense, UX. I
They all
mean,
do better.
this is where they're going. OLED, that we had the 97-inch outside. It looks phenomenal. I need that inside next year, right? With
Yeah,
MLA.
absolutely.
If it comes
Well,
in MLA, 97-inch MLA,
yeah.
I mean, large only. Next year, M-Wave guys, 85, 97-inch TVs or larger. It's going to be an amazing M-Wave.